They laughed at a single father, until the groom froze and recognized who he really was. The laughter started softly like an accidental cough, then grew into a careless ripple that brushed across the sunlit garden without shame. It was the kind of laughter that did not ask permission, the kind that judged before understanding. In the middle of it all stood a man holding a small boy's hand, his suit slightly worn at the elbows, his posture calm but guarded, as if he had learned long ago how to stand straight while the world leaned against him. No one knew yet that this quiet single father was the axis on which their entire afternoon would turn, and no one imagined that before the day ended laughter would be replaced by stunned silence and humbled hearts. If you believe that kindness deserves a second chance, that life can surprise us when we least expect it. Take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness. Stories like this exist because hearts still choose compassion over judgment. The wedding was taking place in broad daylight under a flawless blue sky that felt almost staged, as if nature itself had been paid to cooperate. White chairs were arranged in perfect rows across a manicured lawn. Crystal glasses caught the sunlight, scattering tiny rainbows across linen-covered tables. It was the kind of wedding people whispered about in admiration, the kind that signaled wealth without ever naming it. This was the wedding of Callum Reed, a rising star in the corporate world, marrying into a family whose influence stretched far beyond this garden. Nearly everyone present wore tailored confidence and polite smiles sharpened by comparison. The man with the child did not quite belong to that picture. His name was Rowan Hale, though very few people there knew it. He had arrived early during the quiet hour when staff were still adjusting centerpieces and checking place cards. He preferred arriving early everywhere, a habit formed from years of balancing responsibility with uncertainty. His son Micah, barely 6 years old, clutched his hand with the trust only children still dared to give. Micah's hair was neatly combed, his small suit a careful choice meant to help him blend into a world that often overlooked children like him. Rowan had not always lived this way. There was a time when mornings began with shared coffee and laughter echoing through a home that felt full. That life had cracked open suddenly, leaving him standing alone with a child and a grief too heavy to explain to someone who still believed the world was fair. He became both mother and father, provider and comfort, learning to pack lunches at dawn and read bedtime stories while exhaustion pressed against his eyelids. He learned how to carry silence without letting it harden him. Years passed and responsibility shaped him into someone quieter, more observant. He chose simplicity not because he lacked ambition, but because he understood what truly mattered. The world, however, rarely made that distinction. To the guests gathering now, Rowan looked like an afterthought, a man who had wandered into the wrong invitation list. The whispers followed him as he took his seat near the aisle, careful to help Micah settle comfortably. Some glances lingered too long on his scuffed shoes, on the child beside him, on the absence of a partner at his side. Assumptions bloomed easily in the warmth of the afternoon. People decided who he was before he ever had the chance to exist as anything else. What they did not see was the weight he carried invisibly, the decisions that had shaped entire companies, the night spent reviewing reports while Micah slept nearby, the quiet leadership that never demanded applause. Rowan had learned long ago that power did not always announce itself. As guests filled the seats, a different energy entered the garden. The bride's arrival was imminent, and attention shifted towards spectacle. Cameras lifted, conversations hushed into anticipation. Rowan watched it all with gentle distance, his focus drifting. Instead, to Micah's fascination with the flowers and the soft breeze moving through the trees, he smiled because in moments like these, peace mattered more than belonging. The ceremony unfolded with practiced elegance. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft shadows across faces arranged in expectation. When Callum, the groom, took his place at the front, he looked every bit the successful executive people admired. His tailored suit, confident stance, and polished presence fit perfectly into the image everyone had built around him. Then something unexpected happened. As Callum scanned the seated guests, his gaze slowed, then stopped entirely. His posture shifted almost imperceptibly, as if recognition had rearranged his understanding of the room. His eyes settled on Rowan and the small boy beside him. For a brief moment, the groom forgot where he was. The carefully curated confidence softened into something deeper, something grounded in respect. The murmurs began again, but this time they carried confusion rather than mockery. Guests noticed the pause, the change in energy, the way the groom's attention refused to move on. The officiant hesitated, even the birds seemed quieter. Rowan felt the shift without fully understanding it. He lifted his eyes, meeting Callum's gaze, and offered a simple nod. It was not an acknowledgement of status but of shared history. Years earlier, when no one believed in Callum's potential, when his career teetered on the edge of failure, it had been Rowan who gave him a chance. Not loudly, not publicly, but with trust and guidance that reshaped everything. Callum had once been an intern with ambition and fear in equal measure. Rowan had seen something in him others missed, had protected him from early mistakes, had taught him that leadership meant responsibility before recognition, that mentorship had become the foundation on which Callum built his success. Now standing at the center of his most important day, Callum understood the gravity of that presence. He knew who Rowan was, even if no one else did yet. The realization spread quietly but powerfully. Those seated closest noticed the groom's expression, the way reverence replaced celebration. The laughter from earlier felt suddenly cruel in hindsight. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing that something significant was unfolding beyond their understanding. The ceremony continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Curiosity replaced judgment. Eyes drifted back toward Rowan, studying him anew. The single father, who had arrived unnoticed, now held an invisible gravity. Even Micah sensed it, sitting a little straighter, his small hands still wrapped around his father's. By the time vows were complete, and applause rose into the afternoon air, the truth was already moving through the crowd in hushed clarity. Someone near the front had recognized Rowan. Another whispered his name. A ripple of recognition spread from table to table, carried by surprise and disbelief. Rowan Hale was not simply a guest. He was the founder and chief executive of the company Callum now proudly represented. The visionary leader who avoided headlines and ceremonies, who preferred results over recognition. The man they had laughed at was the very reason this wedding, this lifestyle, this success existed at all. Rowan felt none of the satisfaction they expected. He did not straighten his suit or seek their eyes. His attention remained on Micah, on making sure the boy felt safe, included and loved. That more than any title defined him. At the reception, sunlight still bathed the garden, but the mood had transformed completely. Guests approached Rowan with newfound respect, their voices softer, their smiles careful. Apologies hovered in their expressions, even when words failed them. Rowan accepted it all with quiet grace, never once acknowledging the earlier mockery. He understood that people often judged what they did not understand. He had lived long, enough to forgive that. Micah, unaware of the full shift, simply enjoyed the desserts and the open space to run. Rowan watched him with pride, thinking about the example he was setting, not of wealth or authority, but of dignity. As the afternoon wore on, Callum made his way toward Rowan, his expression filled with gratitude that words could barely contain. There was no public announcement, no dramatic reveal. Power hides in humility, and kindness reveals more truth than any title ever could.